Hello and welcome to episode 212 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the songwriter and drummer from the amazing band Grey Daze. I'm joined by Sean Dowdell. During today's interview, we go into great detail about Grey Daze, how they formed, the band's history, and even their brand new album which is out now called The Phoenix, which honestly is absolutely amazing. We can't obviously avoid the topic of Chester Bennington, and I think Sean is so open and so honest. He talks all about how he handled the grief of finding out about his passing, the shock, the sadness, but for me this episode is done with so much respect, and it should be a celebration of the life of Chester Bennington. I believe on this interview we capture the magic that he brought to all the music that he put his hands to, and I think this is done with so much respect, and I'm so proud of this interview. So what I want to do now is to get straight to it. So here's me and Sean talking all things Grey Daze. So Sean, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Sean, what I'd like to do today is take it right back to the early days. So can you tell me about when you were growing up, those first records that maybe you spent your pocket money on, or those albums that made you want to be in a band?
Oh man. So early on, I was a huge Kiss fan, my age 13, 14, 15, I was a huge Kiss collector. I think I had every Kiss record and comic book, and I love the music and the songs, but I also love the theater that they brought to the stage show, the presence, this kind of mystique, the comic book kind of mystique that they brought to their characters, I thought was really interesting. As I kind of got a little bit older and became interested in playing music myself, the grunge scene kind of came out. Well, I guess before the grunge scene, bands like Cinderella and Poison and Dokken, those were all heavily influencing me early on. And then as I came into like 17, 18, 19 years old, the grunge scene really kind of took hold, and you had bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam. And then, of course, my favorite, Alice in Chains. Those bands were hugely instrumental in making me want to join a band and learn how to play drums. But then I had kind of this alternate side to me too, where I was starting to appreciate Depeche Mode and The Cure and the Smiths and, Front 242. So I had kind of this alternate music avenue as well. But playing wise, really the grunge scene kind of sparked my interest in becoming a musician.
That's amazing. And can you remember those first gigs you went to? Because I used to love albums, Guns N' Roses, Green Day, Pearl Jam, all those early ones. But it wasn't until I went to see a band live that I really appreciated just how much work and effort goes into a band. So do you remember those first shows where you went and you were just blown away by a performance?
Of course, my first show was Kiss, was blown away.
Oh, wow.
Kiss and Aerosmith.
Oh my God.
And then I saw Cinderella and Bullet Boys and, some of those early glam bands, Poison and Dokken. And then I was lucky enough to see Guns N' Roses on the first Appetite for Destruction tour.
I am so jealous right now.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a life-changing experience for me watching Axl and Slash and Steven Adler and Duff up on stage. They brought something different that everybody else in the glam scene was kind of doing, was really similar. And it's not a dig. It's just kind of what everyone had gotten cycled into. And along comes those guys, and they really changed the music world for me. Guns N' Roses Appetite is still probably in my top 3 albums of all time. It was a game changer. I've had the pleasure of meeting Slash a couple times and tattooing him in our studios. And those guys were just hitting on all cylinders when they wrote and recorded that record. It was just incredible.
And at this point, are you thinking to yourself, you want to be in a band, you want to be, the drummer, or are you thinking to yourself, I just want to be involved in music? Or was it something like later on in life where you discovered that you could be, I don't know, maybe in a college band or with some mates just chilling?
I think the grunge scene really pushed me into wanting to become a musician. And my friends who had started becoming musicians, I was hanging out with a lot of people who were all starting to play and be in bands, and it kind of, through osmosis, you kind of wanted to become that yourself. And it was just being a product of the environment I found myself in, mostly through my friends that were starting to play in bands, local bands in Arizona, like Pelvic Meatloaf and Aloysius Tool and bands that nobody's really ever heard of unless you're, a Phoenix native. That really kind of pushed me into wanting to become a musician myself.
That's incredible. So tell me about those early bands you were in. Can you remember those ones that you maybe didn't to actually become anything special, but you were just getting to form a group with other people and like-minded musicians that you just wanted to just create something special?
So the first couple of what I would call projects I played in, we weren't full bands. We didn't have singers yet. There were just a couple of guys jamming together. The first solid band that I was in was called SD and His Friends. And Chester was in that band with me. We formed that group in 1992. We put out a 3-song demo in 93. And then that band disbanded. We formed Grey Daze out of that. So I've really only been in a few bands in my life. So SD and His Friends, Grey Daze. I was in a side project with Chester called SAC, SAC. Then we did another side project called Bucket of Weenies, BOW. And then I was in a band called Waterface as well. So I've really only been in 5 or 6 bands. I've guested on a bunch of records for people and come and done, one-offs of shows and stuff like that. But as far as being dedicated and immersed into a full band, I've only been in, what I just named off 5 or 6. So
yeah.
But SD and His Friends was the first band that I was fully a part of, and that had all 4 members, and we had a real singer, and we were writing originals. That was the first band, and I loved it. It was a life-changing experience for me.
And obviously you've been involved in a few bands, like you just said with Chester. Can you remember the first time you met him and how it was that you were introduced to each other?
So we were playing with a guitar player named Chris Hewlett here in Phoenix, and we are trying to form our first band. And he said, "Hey, I know this kid who sounds just like Eddie Vedder. We should try him out for singers. He plays with my little brother, Scotty." I said, "Cool, bring him in." So maybe a day or two later, he brought him down to the rehearsal studio. And quite honestly, when he walked in, I was not stoked. He was this little skinny, nerdy kid. And, we all had this really long hair, and, we all looked the part. But then, Chester walked in, he was kind of nerdy looking. And I remember, and I like to tell this story because it humbles myself real quickly, because I feel like an asshole every time I tell the story. He walked in and I was unimpressed. And then he walked up and he started singing. And I was like, wow, okay, this kid can sing. From that moment that he started singing, it was like, this kid is good. He's only 15 years old and he's good. And he has never played in a band before. Let's see what we can do. And he and I hit it off, and we became best of friends at that point. But in all fairness, when he walked in the door, I was not impressed. I had this vision of, Eddie Vedder walking through the door or something like that. He didn't look like Eddie Vedder, but he sounded amazing. So, it's a great lesson for people to realize, like, not everything is what it, sometimes what they look like aren't what they seem, or what they seem aren't what they are.
Yeah. And then obviously you said you hit it off straight away. So the personality mixed, and, being with like-minded musicians and in a band, sometimes it's quite hard, isn't it? Because you need to gel, you need to make sure that there's chemistry there. But you said that you pretty much had it straight away when you and Chester met.
Yeah, he and I had chemistry for forever. Sometimes you got guys in bands that have different motivations. They want to play music because they want to get laid, or because they want to be famous, or because they want to make money. And sometimes you have musicians that just want to write great songs and play with their friends. And that was the kind of musician Chester was. He just wanted to write great songs. Along the way, you run into musicians that have drug problems or girl problems or whatever problems, and it tends to be completely distracting for the project. But for the most part, he and I were on the same page for many, many years.
And what was it like then when you actually were trying to write original songs as a band? So obviously, you said it was from the other bands that this Grey Daze formed. So you had good musicians, you had a good structure, you knew that the foundations were strong. Was it just a case of all being in the same room and just letting the ideas flow and be creative?
Yeah, in our first project, we had a couple of older guys in the band that they wanted to play a little bit heavier, more metal kind of music for SD and His Friends. And Chester and I was a little bit more geared towards the Alice in Chains, but still had some of the metal influences. Chester had more Jane's Addiction, was a huge influence for him growing up. And then Stone Temple Pilots, when they came on the scene, was a huge influence for him. So, we all had different directions or different influences, but the fact that we all wanted to play together, we rehearsed like 4 nights a week. So we were all immersing ourselves together and trying to figure out what that was. And the easiest way for us to get to write originals was to start rehearsing and learning covers. Yeah. So as we started learning other people's music, and like, Chris would say, hey, I want to learn this, I don't know, Motorhead song. And Chester would say, hey, I want to learn this Jane's Addiction song. And I would say, hey, I want to try to learn this Pop Will Eat Itself song. We're all over the map. So it took us quite a while to try to figure out our own vibe and our own sound so that we could move forward and write originals from that point.
And did you feel that you just had it right from the start because you had such a great set of musicians, or did it just have so many problems to try and iron out?
No, it took a long time. It took years for us to really hit our stride. There was, just because you have talent doesn't mean you're a good band. Just because you have a good singer, a good band, because you have a great drummer. You have to have so many things go right. And by the way, you have to have people that are willing to set their egos aside and write for the greater good of the song. And that took a long time to learn. So no, we weren't writing great material from the get-go. It took many, many years. And it's a learning curve the whole way through, and you only find out through failure, Yeah. And I've wrote a couple of books about this where like sometimes if you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. You're really not going to learn anything from all your successes. You're going to learn from your failures. So as a musician, it's the same way. You write a bad part of a song, you go back, you listen to it, you realize that part of the song doesn't work, and you have to restructure the song because you realize that part's not working. That's a point of failure. It's not a bad thing. Failure is part of the process. So the sooner you realize that, and the sooner you realize not everything you do is great, is an important thing to know as a musician.
And that works across all aspects of life, really. But I think it's really important, that message, because too many people are scared to fail because it just makes them feel weak or not strong enough to try and bounce back. But it's such a crucial message to get out there. It doesn't matter if you're making mistakes, because as long as you bounce back and learn from it, you are going to become stronger, aren't you?
Yeah. And quite honestly, if you're working through a process that's important enough, you need the failures. The failures are going to make whatever you're doing stronger. It's going to point out the weaknesses in what you're doing and make you work on those weaknesses to make sure that whatever you're doing is the best possible version. If you're skating through stuff too easy, like I said before, you're not pushing it hard enough, you're probably not going to learn much, and it's probably not that good.
That's really good advice, and something I think that a lot of listeners now will take a moment to think about, because I think sometimes life's too busy to even acknowledge that you might be making mistakes or that you're scared to fuck up, but you've got to, haven't you?
There's two ways to think about it. If you're too scared to try because you're scared to fail, if you're so scared of failing that you were not going to try, you're never going to grow. So for me, it's I look at whatever I'm doing, whether it's business, music, relationships, whatever. If I would rather put myself in a position to where I knew I tried my hardest, and if I fail, oh well, at least I tried, rather than not try and wonder what could have been, oh man, if I would have tried to open up that business, or if I would have tried to run a 10K, and who cares if I only made it, 8K, at least I tried, instead of just wondering what you could have done or where you could have pushed yourself to. I think for me, the fear of not trying is far greater than the fear of failing. Like everybody fears failure, but once you understand that failure is not that bad, and what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Most of the time, if you fail, you're in the same spot you are now. So what do you have to lose? Most of the time, not much.
Really thoughtful stuff. So with Grey Daze, obviously you're starting to make music. You've had a few years at it and it's going well. And eventually Chester decides to leave to go off to do Linkin Park, right?
No, the band broke up. We had a big fight. We had just signed a production deal with Warner Brothers. We had a big fight a few days beforehand, and we just couldn't recover from it. And we all went our separate ways. Our attorney at the time, Scott Harrington, had the foresight to realize that Chester was really something special. And he had another attorney he was working with out in LA that was working with a band called Zero, and they were looking for another singer to join the project. And Scott reached out to Chester, said, "Hey, I have these guys out in LA that I'm working with their manager or their lawyer, whatever it is. Why don't you try out for them?" So they sent him a demo. He was in Arizona. He recorded a couple of songs, and then he drove out to LA and auditioned in person. And then they accepted into the band. And then they changed the name, I think, to Hybrid Theory. And then it became Linkin Park. It wasn't like he just decided to leave the band. We all had a big fight. It was a big breakup, and we just couldn't recover from it. But it's just one of those things that happened along the way. And very proud of where he went with that band and everything he did with those guys.
Was it difficult looking back, thinking you'd wish you'd done something different to avoid that massive fight that then led to this breakup, or was it just inevitable that you just couldn't ever come back from it?
There's a few things that you think of at the time. I think, some of us in the band had drug problems. Some of us had ego problems. Some of us had marriage problems. That all creeped in, all culminating into this big ball of crap that we really couldn't get out of our own way. So quite honestly, in hindsight, I'm glad that the band broke up. Otherwise, Chester wouldn't have went on to do Linkin Park, and that band is one of the most influential, successful bands in the last 25 years in music. I don't know that Grey Daze ever would have got to that point. I would like to think so. I think our music's phenomenal. I think what we could have accomplished, we might have been there, but who knows? And I try not to second guess that stuff so much. We broke up for many reasons, not one reason. So, and I don't know that if we had had early on success at that moment, I think the band would have broken up eventually because of those internal problems we were having. Drugs are a very difficult thing to get past. And if you don't have somebody trying to get sober in the band, they're always going to be a drain on what you're doing. So that there were some big problems in the band. That being said, Chester went on to meet those guys in Linkin Park, and those guys are really hardworking dudes. They deserve the success that they got. Not only were they hardworking, but they were original in what they were doing. They really did kind of change the map of, I guess, the new metal genre that they, I don't know if they invented it, but they were at the forefront of it. That rap rock thing that they kind of developed. Those guys deserve every accolade they've ever gotten. So I'm not a jealous person. I always want to see everybody in my world succeed. So I don't have any jealousy or animosity towards what they accomplished. I'm actually very proud of those guys. So, and even when the band was broken up, it's funny because I used to get sent big boxes of CDs from all of the record labels, and they'd have me fill out these forms and let them know what I thought of their new bands. And I remember getting a demo from Hybrid Theory, not knowing Chester was in the band, and I listened to it. And as soon as I heard it, I knew it was his voice. I'm like, "Oh, this has to be Chester." Then I looked, who's that singer? Sure enough, it was Chester. And I wrote an honest review. And this is when he and I weren't talking. We weren't friends at the time. We were very upset with each other with the breakup. And I remember writing Warner Brothers back saying, "This band is really good. The singer's great. I'm really proud." I remember sharing that with my wife. And she's like, "Wow, that's really awesome of you to say that you're not upset." I'm like, "Why would I be upset? Like, that to me is so small-minded."
Yeah.
I feel like I had a very positive contribution to Chester's life and Chester's talent and Chester's work ethic and Chester's songwriting, all those things I felt like I contributed to. So why would I not want him to succeed, even if I wasn't part of that? So I remember that very distinctly. And it was a watershed moment, I think, for me in life, like realizing other people's successes is something to applaud, not to be jealous of or to be envious of. And then he and I reconciled a couple years later after that, in 2002 when Bobby got sick. But I'm really impressed with everything those guys did.
So I'm really glad that you told me that, because I was going to ask, did you ever get a chance to kind of patch things up and get things good before obviously Chester left us? Now, was it on good terms when unfortunately he took his life?
Oh, well, Chester and I were best of friends up until the point he passed away. So when we reconciled in 2002, he and I became business partners in Club Tattoo. We own a multi-million-dollar business together. We started 2 clothing companies together. We did a shoe line. We did a lot of things outside of music together. And then we decided to put Grey Daze back together in 2016. That was Chester's idea.
This is amazing.
So we were working, we were working on all this while he was alive.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. We were working with a producer named Sylvia Massey. We were going back and forth with recordings while he was alive. When Chester passed away, he was supposed to be in Phoenix a couple days after that to start rehearsals. So for our reunion show that we had announced on the internet and had already sold out. So he and I were best of friends when he passed away. And we talked 2 days prior to his passing. So.
And obviously, I don't want to get too deep with this because it's still, I'm sure, very raw. But did you ever see this coming, or were you thinking he was in a really good place and you never even ever imagined that you'd be having a phone call to be told that unfortunately Chester is no longer with us?
You know, I knew he had some demons, and I knew he was taking some stuff. There's a couple factors here, right? The first one is I know he stopped taking his antidepressant medication. That's the first. That to me has a very dramatic impact on his taking his own life. I really believe that. Secondly, I know he was having some trouble with the way some of the fans were responding to his new album, One More Light. I know he felt underappreciated and unloved by a fan base that I think he had come to rely on to support everything he had been doing up to that point. There were some personal things going on that I think it all just culminated at the wrong moment, at the wrong day, when he was by himself and he took action that was irreversible when no one else was around to maybe talk him out of it. So, and there's so many factors that go into this that, you know, and I'm giving conjecture here on what I thought was going through his mind, and I don't know because I'm not in his mind, and I don't pretend to be. But I know that there were outside influences and variables that were heavily influencing his state of mind at the time. However, I did not think that they would culminate into that choice, and it breaks my heart to this day that he's not with us.
And the fact that you had these rehearsals planned to then start a new life on Grey Daze again and a sold out show, I don't even know. How do you even kind of digest that news and even contemplate just getting up the next day after hearing that your best friend has gone? Because there's people that will listen to this podcast that have lost people in their life through suicide, and anything you can kind of provide, I think, will help people deal with loss. But how do you even function the next day?
So my main concern from the day that I was told, I called, literally it was maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I think it was a Thursday. That Thora, my wife Thora, called me, told me that Chester had just been reported as to taking his own life. I called to Linda. She answered the phone. She said, "It's true. I'm getting on a plane from Sedona here in a few minutes. Will you come out to LA and help me?" And I said, absolutely. I was in Las Vegas, had to drive back to Phoenix, get all my stuff, then drive to LA. My immediate thoughts went to Linda and the kids. That was the first 5 or 6 days thought processes. How do I help the family recover from this? Myself didn't come into the picture until about the day after his funeral, which was about 10 days later or something like that. I had to try to find something to be grateful for. And his friendship to me was always a blessing. He was a great guy. He was a great friend. He was a great dad. As far as band member, that was so far down the list of priorities for me. He and I hung out so much outside of music that I thought of him as my friend way before I thought of him as my band member, if that makes any sense. And it was hard to lose my friend. And but at the same time, I just kept trying to remind myself, man, not everybody gets to have a friend that great. Find yourself very lucky. You're very lucky to have ever had a friend like this. And just trying to find gratitude in a moment of pain was really my way through it. It is to this day.
And there was never, because I've seen people that have lost people close to them, and the initial reaction is anger because they're frustrated. They're no longer with this person in life, or they can no longer have those conversations they wish they had had, or any more memories to be made. But I take it you've never had that stance of anger because you've just been very grateful for the times you did have.
The only anger I think I felt was at myself for not recognizing something deeper that was going on. And I think every person who is close to someone who takes their own life feels a moment of guilt or several moments of guilt. What could I have done to change the outcome? What could I have done to help them? And I think that the thing that is hardest to actually come to grips with is the answer is really nothing. You really can't do anything for someone that's thinking that way. You can only try to help shape their mindset over time. If they're lucky enough to have survived a suicide attempt, talking to them continually, letting them know how much people care about them, letting them know how much they matter. Those types of things may help build their confidence and their mental stability into not trying it again. However, if you don't see that stuff coming, it's very difficult to avoid a train you don't see coming. So I think it's something that's important to say out loud is you have to come to grips real fast with the guilt that follows losing somebody close to suicide, because chances are there's little or nothing you could have done to stop that. And that's a painful reality, but it is a reality. And like I said, I never was angry with Chester for taking his own life. I understood the demons that he was dealing with, and I understand that sometimes it's too much of a cross to bear for people. I'm disappointed that it happened. I'm disappointed in the choice. I feel I feel bad for his children, his wife, his mom, his brother, his sister, all that stuff. I feel bad for, but at the same time, I understand that Chester was in a lot of pain, and the one shining light for me is I know he's on the good side on the other side. I know he's a point of light for a lot of people on the other side. And that helps me come to terms with it.
And with the upcoming release of the new album, The Phoenix, this is another way for yourself to just celebrate the life of Chester. How did you know it was the right time to finish this album, knowing that there may be not the right time ever, but for you personally, it must have been about being in the right mindset and being strong enough to revisit this and to finish this project?
Well, the first album, Amends, that we released in 2020, that was a much more reflective, sad, somber, melancholy album. A lot of emotions, a lot of people crying when they listen to that record, because you can hear the stress and in Chester's voice and the pain in Chester's voice. This album took on a different attitude. This album had much more of a celebratory feeling, not only while we were recording it and writing it, but in Chester's vocal message. And that all happened by mistake, I think. When we were grouping the songs on the last record, I think there was a commonality of sadness and reflectiveness in the songs we chose. And I don't know that we did that on purpose, maybe subconsciously. But the songs that were left for the second record kind of came together. We realized about halfway through writing it, like, wow, these songs seem a lot more upbeat, a lot happier, a lot more powerful. You're getting that angst from Chester that you love without that super heavy pain that was on the first record. And as far as knowing it was the right time, you never know it's the right time. It just felt like the time. So, we took our time. We wrote the record over a year period and recorded it at Sunset Sound Recorders in Hollywood. And we literally just curated the entire thing as best we could. We felt like we had something very special, and we wanted the listeners to hear it in a way that showcases Chester, maybe in a way they haven't heard him before.
And how does it feel knowing that, there's so many fans out there that have been waiting to hear these songs? The 10-song collection, it's literally just over a week away, and finally these people can hear these songs and find the emotions and reflect in the best ways they can through this music that maybe some people thought they'd never get a chance to hear.
Um, it's just cathartic to some degree. It's like, wow, we got to the finish line. That feels good. I feel like we did right by our friend. I think he would be very proud of the music that it ended up with. The way we wrote it and curated it. I think we were very careful and deliberate in how we had not only approached the songs, but how we completed them. I think the intentions and the original intent was left intact, even though we dramatically changed the sound of the music to make it a little bit more modern and relevant in today's music world. I believe that Chet would be very proud of the finished product. Honestly, it's quite a good feeling knowing that we finished it. And that's probably the easiest way I can sum it up.
I really wish there was a way that he could hear it, don't you? That he could then get the thumbs up and to know he was really happy and that it was what the fans would have wanted, and the energy that he got across in these songs that help people find that love again, and can relate to those lyrics. And just, it's such a shame that you'll never get to hear them.
Quite honestly, I think he did hear him. I think he was with us the entire time we recorded and wrote these songs. I feel I'm a firm believer in the afterlife and spirituality on the other side, and I firmly believe that I feel Chester's presence quite often. So I know it sounds crazy, but I believe that Chester was part of the process and was influential in the process all along.
That's lovely to hear. Now, what I do on this podcast to make it as original as I can is I ask the guests to choose the final piece of music that is played on the outro music for the podcast. Now, it can be by any band, any song, any piece of music that means a lot to you personally. Hitting just over 200 episodes, we've had 200 guests pick 200 different songs. So I am going to put you on the spot, Sean. What's a song that means a lot to you that you think would be the perfect outro after this is all edited and out there for the world to listen to? The final piece of music that's played is your choice. So what would you like to go with today?
I have a great memory of Chester and I sitting in the crowd screaming at the top of our lungs to "And We Die Young" by Alice in Chains. I think it's fitting. It's a great memory I have of him. Back when he was touring with Dead by Sunrise, I went out on the road with them for a couple of days, and they were opening for Alice in Chains. And after each performance, he would come out in the crowd with me, and we would scream every single lyric to every song to Alice in Chains. So, "And We Die Young" by Alice in Chains.
That's a hell of a song. One of my favorite bands out there, and just the meaning behind it is beautiful. So thank you so much for that choice.
Thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and really good luck with the album. I really feel there's a lot of fans out there that are going to get a lot from this, and maybe because you're in the band, it must be hard to see from the outside. But I think what you've done and the effort and time you've put into this is incredible. So I'm really grateful and wish you all the luck with it.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the amazing Sean from the awesome band Grey Daze. And as we discussed on today's interview, their brand new album, which is called The Phoenix, is out now. And it truly is a celebration of Chester Bennington. It's a very deep and emotional album, but it's done so well, and it really is an incredible album. So go and check it out now. If you've enjoyed today's episode, and I know I say this on each and every episode, please share it. All the links are on markandme.com. This podcast has and always will remain free. But what I do ask in return is you share it. And as I said, it makes a massive difference. So going on Facebook and hitting that button just to share it across your page, or going on Instagram and sharing it across your stories, or just hitting that retweet button on Twitter can go such a long way. And that's why I keep asking everyone to do it. It gets a whole new audience to see the podcast. And who knows, someone might see that little picture today and then check out the interview, and before you know it, they're a huge fan and delve right back in and listen to all 200 episodes that I've done up till now. It really does go a huge way. So please, if you've enjoyed today's episode, share, and share. And if you've really enjoyed today's episode, I do have a Patreon page set up. Each and every month, thanks to my amazing friends at Richer Sounds, I have some incredible prizes to give away, and these are to say thank you for supporting me. But not only that, you're going to get 8 episodes guaranteed every month. You get a welcome pack with an incredible badge that is a Mark and Me logo, and it's absolutely beautiful, done by the guys at Digital Suicide. It's an exclusive badge that only Patreon people can now get. You get some stickers, and you get some exclusive episodes that are just for you guys at home. And I'm going to be doing loads more stuff, some videos, behind the scenes, and so much exclusive stuff just for Patreons. So the link is on markandme.com. You can sign up right away, and it really does go a long way. I'll be back in only a few days' time with a brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, listen to Grey Daze, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.